In primary care, I can often predict someone's long-term metabolic health by asking one simple question. What do you usually do after you eat? Because what happens in the 60 minutes after a meal is sometimes more important than the meal itself. Not because blood sugar rising is inherently bad, as it's supposed to rise a bit with meals, but the problem is when those spikes are high, long, and repeated thousands of times over a lifetime. This is where your risk for type 2 diabetes, fatty liver, heart disease, and accelerated aging of your blood vessels all climb. And here's the good news. There are 3 things you can do after every meal that lower the spike, lower insulin demand, and quietly change your long-term trajectory. I'm Dr. Mitch Rice, a practicing board-certified primary care physician here in the United States. And today I'm going to show you exactly what those 3 things are, why they work inside your body, and how to start using them today. Most people think that their health is broken down into how healthy or unhealthy the meals they ate were in that given day. But your body does not live in single meal isolation. It lives in patterns. So let's say you eat on average 3 meals a day. That's about 1,000 meals a year. Over 10 years, that is more than 10,000 post-meal windows where your body has to deal with glucose. And every one of those windows says, does glucose get used or does glucose get stored? These 3 small shifts done repeatedly compound into dramatically different outcomes. Now here's the part that most people never hear, because 2 of these 3 things have nothing to do with exercise. And one of them is actually something that most people do the opposite of. The first strategy on our list is to drink cold water immediately after eating. This is one that almost nobody connects to post-meal blood sugar control. And the mechanism genuinely surprised me when I first encountered this research. Drinking 250 to 500 milliliters, or anywhere from about 12 to 16 ounces of cold water immediately after finishing a meal does something very specific inside your digestive system. It slows down gastric emptying, which is the rate at which your stomach releases its contents into the small intestine. And here's why that matters. The faster food moves from your stomach into your small intestine, the faster glucose floods into your bloodstream. If you slow the gastric emptying rate, this produces a gradual controlled glucose rise. This is the exact same mechanism that famous medications like Ozempic, Mounjaro, and Zepbound use to help people lose weight. Cold water slows that emptying rate through 2 mechanisms simultaneously. First, the temperature drop signals your stomach to contract more slowly, and second, the added volume creates physical resistance that delays gastric emptying mechanically. Think of a river with a dam. Without the dam, the water rushes downstream all at once, but with the dam, it flows slowly and steadily in a way the downstream system can actually handle. Research published in the Journal of Gastroenterology found that cold water consumption after meals measurably delayed gastric emptying and reduced the peak post-meal glucose response compared to no water, or even compared to that of warm water. This is 2 mechanisms with 1 simple habit, and this can truly be very powerful. You want to drink about 250 to 500 mLs or 12 to 16 ounces of cold water immediately after finishing your meal. Not during, but right after you're full. Refrigerator cold is sufficient. You don't need ice water. Strategy number 2 is to go on a 10-minute walk after you finish your meal. And the mechanism is why it works so much better than any other form of movement for this specific purpose. So here's what I mean. When your legs contract during walking, they activate something called the GLUT4 transporters. These are essentially glucose doors on the surface of your muscle cells. When those doors open, glucose flows directly from your bloodstream into your muscles for fuel without the need of insulin. And that is the critical detail. Your muscles can literally pull glucose out of your body completely independently of insulin, but only when they are actively contracting. The glucose gets used immediately and the insulin spike is blunted. Research shows that a 10-minute walk after eating reduces post-meal blood sugar spikes by up to 30%. So you want to implement this within 30 minutes of finishing your meal, as the timing truly matters more than the distance. And the cool thing is, even a slow walk works. The muscle contraction is the mechanism, not the intensity of that contraction. Walking after dinner specifically has the strongest evidence because the evening meal is typically the largest with the most carbohydrates. But honestly, you can do it at the end of any single meal. Strategy number 3, and this is one that probably surprises people the most, and that is to do diaphragmatic breathing 5 minutes after you're done eating. The mechanism behind this is honestly one of the most clinically relevant things I've ever learned about post-meal glucose regulation. Now, when most people finish their meal, they either sit on the couch, scroll on their phone, or go straight back to work after eating. And all 3 of those activities keep the sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight branch, in a partially activated state. And here's what most people never learn. The sympathetic nervous system and glucose metabolism are directly connected. When your sympathetic system is activated, even mildly, your liver releases stored glucose into the bloodstream through a process called the hepatic glucose output. This means that stress and low-level sympathetic activation after a meal actively adds glucose to your bloodstream on top of what your food is already contributing. You can eat a perfectly clean meal and still have a significant glucose spike if your nervous system is in a stressed state while you digest it. The fix is deliberate parasympathetic activation immediately after eating. The best way to do this is diaphragmatic breathing. This is slow, deep breathing that visibly expands the belly rather than the chest, as this activates the vagus nerve directly. The vagus nerve is the primary driver of the parasympathetic system, and when it activates, hepatic glucose output drops, insulin sensitivity improves, and the digestive system shifts into its optimal absorptive mode. Research published in the Frontiers in Physiology found that 5 minutes of slow diaphragmatic breathing after meals significantly reduced post-meal glucose and insulin responses, and the effect was strongest when breathing was started within 10 minutes of finishing the meal. How to do this correctly is you want to sit comfortably, upright but relaxed, place one hand on your chest and the other on your belly. Breathe in slowly through your nose for about 5 seconds and your belly should rise. And then you want to exhale through your mouth slowly for 6 to 8 seconds. Do this for about 5 minutes immediately after finishing your meal. You can do it at the table, in your car, or anywhere that you're sitting after eating. Now, you don't have to do all 3 of these things consistently after every meal, but I want you to try to pick one of these things and stick with it for the next 4 weeks. Once you nail down the first one, you can then add the second one to your routine for another 4 weeks and then add the third. If you do all 3, cold water immediately after eating, followed by 5 minutes of diaphragmatic breathing, and then following that with a 10-minute walk, you are addressing post-meal glucose from 3 completely independent biological directions simultaneously. The compounding effect of that protocol, done consistently over years, changes your long-term metabolic trajectory in ways that are measurable on lab work. If this video changed the way you think about what happens directly after you eat, please consider subscribing as well as sharing this with someone that may need to hear it. Doing those 2 things specifically truly helps push this message as well as all of these other videos on this channel to the people that are desperately needing this information. My goal is to change the healthcare system because the way it's currently designed is to treat disease after it's already present. My true passion is to power you with the right tools so that you can prevent disease from happening a decade or more earlier than it otherwise would. If you want the complete roadmap to optimizing metabolic health and reducing blood sugar in general, I've put together the best foods to eat, which exercises are best, and evidence-based supplements all together in one free resource called the Metabolic Blueprint. It goes so much deeper than any single video ever could, and if you're interested, you can check it out completely for free using the link below. Finally, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. This is from the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 31.